So, ladies and gents, this is a very, very interesting story. You see it here, right? In a weird way, I would say Top Gun is benefiting from Venom. This is a Vulture article all about Sony Pictures and what they did with Hollywood. How Hollywood sort of counted them out, and their very odd response to it all. It's very strange. I want to give you some backstory before we get to the fact that they're trying to take credit for Top Gun Maverick, and then obviously they are talking bollocks with respect to Top Gun Maverick. Like, they are unequivocally talking nonsense with respect to Top Gun Maverick. But I want to give you some background because I think it's important, right? Like, it's interesting. And I think we can sort of debunk some of the things that they're saying, and then we'll get to their laughable comments. And they are genuinely laughable about Top Gun Maverick. So again, this is on Vulture. Way back in the darkest days of N95 era, Sony Pictures Entertainment did something drastic. Starting in the spring of 2020 and continuing through this fall, the studio arm of the Japanese electronics conglomerate basically defaulted on everything promised by its name. It stopped making motion pictures and ceased releasing entertainment. As theatres across North America remained locked, as well as all the stuff in Japan as well. Hollywood executives began popping Klonopin for fear of audiences abandoning the Cineplex forever. Sony hastily auctioned off a slew of titles, which is The Mitchells vs. the Machines to Netflix, Hotel Transylvania 4 to Amazon, An American Pickle to HBO Max, Greyhound to Apple TV, a lot of stuff, right? And repeatedly kicked presumed blockbusters like Ghostbusters Afterlife, Morbius and Venom further down the release corridor. So we know that they were pausing production on stuff, they were pushing production on stuff, they were selling stuff, and they were like, whoa, we really don't know what we're doing. Now each Hollywood studio found a different way to twist. In the pandemic wind, Disney dumped Mulan and Soul directly onto Disney Plus, and got sued by Scarlett Johansson, which was hilarious, or tried to be sued anyway. And Universal ironed out a lions lying down with lambs deal with AMC to share paid-on video demand profits as it ploughed ahead with plans to shorten the theatrical window. Now they then start talking about HBO Max with a day and date experiment that ended up mightily pissing off the industry. And I think it's also important because when we get further down the line in this article, like the HBO Max thing had Legendary really pissed. Legendary, the guys who made Godzilla vs. Kong, the guys who put 75% behind it, it is their production. It's not Warner Brothers. Same with Dune. They were going to sue Warner Brothers because they were like, no, you don't get to put our stuff on HBO Max. That's not how this works. You've done 25% and you're the distributors, but no, you can't just do that. Because they really wanted to release it in theatres. It was their gamble to make. They wanted to do it. And there was obviously a settlement outside of court with Warner Brothers, I believe. So I think that's really important to note, actually, Legendary's approach to all of this. Because Legendary were a large part of why things started coming back. Because they had I think anyway, they had the balls to do it. Whereas Sony kept pushing things back. More and more and more. Now Sony ended up parceling stuff out to the highest bidder. It became what the Wall Street Journal characterized as an arms dealer rather than a combatant in the streaming war. Because Sony didn't have anything, they didn't have a streaming platform. But a funny thing happened just as Sony was being counted out as surviving the industry's mighty inflection point. It suddenly and dramatically reversed course. In October 2021, in the aftermath of lackluster debuts by would-be hits like Warner Brothers' The Suicide Squad, the fact that anyone thought that was going to be a hit, are you brain dead? Suicide Squad is a maligned film. It was not going to be good. Disney's Jungle Cruise, I think Jungle Cruise had a higher chance of being a hit, to be perfectly honest. But the Culver City studio finally decided to release Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Now, that film was always going to do okay, because the first one did really, really well. But it did really, really well and had good reviews. Suicide Squad did well in terms of numbers, but had awful reviews. So these articles I always find baffling. And bearing in mind, Vulture is interviewing Sony for this article. So they are really sucking on Sony's D here. Massively. The flesh-chomping aliens surpassed all financial expectations, rampaging to more than 500 million in global ticket sales. Sony followed up by finally dropping Ghostbusters Afterlife a month later, which took in 204.4 million worldwide to relaunch a long-dormant franchise, and then Sony launched, of course, Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, all these movies were going to do well. In fact, it's more of a shame that Ghostbusters Afterlife didn't do better, right? But Venom Let There Be Carnage was always going to do well. I bet you anything, Venom 3 is not going to do very well, because people don't really like Venom Let There Be Carnage. But Ghostbusters Afterlife was always going to do, as well as, should have done well, but, better than it did, but was always going to do well. Spider-Man No Way Home was always going to do very, very well. Spider-Man is a property that, if you look back even at the Raimi stuff, it always makes huge sums of money. Massive sums of money. Everyone loves Spider-Man. It just seems to be the case. So they start touting all of this, and then this is the background laying it down, and then we get to this stuff. Sony's Motion Picture Group president Sanford Panich and Joseph Greenstein admit they were less than assured when they spent the $110 million Venom into the movie marketplace. When we first started releasing movies last October, there were really no other big movies. Everyone had pushed their big movies to this year, to this summer. That's wrong. Godzilla vs. Kong. Again, Godzilla vs. Kong. That's wrong. And also, Halloween came out the same weekend as Venom Let There Be Carnage, the second Halloween film. So again, that's wrong. It's completely incorrect. But again, Vulture, they're interviewing Sony, so they are sucking at the D. We took a big gamble putting Venom in theatres. Then we doubled down with Ghostbusters. Then our biggest bet was when every other tentpole had fled. We tripled down with Spider-Man, our biggest, most important piece of IP. Yes, so it was always going to do well. I mean, it was around Christmas. Come on now. Behave. Sony's risks certainly yielded rewards and continued doing so into February. Arguably, the movie calendar's deadest month when Tom Holland's starring video game adaptation Uncharted became a surprise hit, notching $401 million for the studio. The executives were quick to take credit in their brinkmanship, and in Panich's case, even taking credit for the gonzo box office performance of Top Gun Maverick. Here's what this utter fool, literally doesn't understand the industry at all, had to say. There's so much press about Top Gun right now. It's like the movie business is back, Panich says. In a weird way, I would say Top Gun is benefiting from us taking our shot. Venom is the start of that story that allows Top Gun to do the kind of business it did. These things don't happen overnight. It's a seeding. Completely wrong. Completely wrong. Because Venom 3 is not going to do well. Top Gun was always going to do well. People were genuinely excited for Top Gun. They wanted a known... And then people have watched Top Gun and told other people to go watch Top Gun, going, you don't even need to watch the first one. It's just a really good feel-good film. But these plebs at Sony are trying to take credit for it. Absolutely baffling. And it's insane to me that Vulture didn't bother to call them out either. What? Really? Absolute madness. There's literally nothing else to this article that I want to cover because they talk utter BS. But let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think that there is any truth to this or not? I unequivocally disagree with this. I think there were movies which were released like genuinely, in the thick of it all that did, fine. Like great reviews. Would have done even better if they weren't released day and date on streaming. Bloody Venom. Terrible film. Remember, if a film is good, it'll always do well. If a film is a sequel to a film that was well liked, it's always going to do relatively well. Venom was always going to do relatively well. And like Spider-Man was always going to do relatively well. Top Gun Maverick was always going to do relatively well. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Take care. Also, ladies and gentlemen, consider checking out my Teespring store. Supporting the channel via this way does go a long way, but also not only that, you do get to wear some awesome merch. These are one-of-a-kind designs designed for me by my graphic designer. We of course have our Clown World line, which is in mugs, hoodies, t-shirts. We've got Space Jeebus. And then for something a little bit different, we of course have right down at the bottom right here, we have our Pulsar GTIR. Also, ladies and gentlemen, consider checking out and supporting my second channel, which is Car Nonsense. This is a vlog and car channel. You can find links to this in the description box along with my Teespring. Please do consider supporting.